Before we begin, I want to pause and offer some clarity. What we're about to talk about is heavy. It may feel heavy. This episode deals with ways that help can be twisted into harm, how comfort that looks like care can actually be control. So if at any point this becomes overwhelming, give yourself permission to step away. There's no weakness in protecting your own well-being. And for those of you who do stay, know this. Even in exposing how counterfeit comfort operates, I'll keep pointing us back to hope. Because false comfort may hook, but real healing is still possible. Help is supposed to heal. It's supposed to lift burdens and create safety and restore dignity. But what happens when help becomes the very thing that keeps you tied down? What happens when the words that promise relief are actually the bait that holds you captive? That's the dynamic at the heart of what I've been calling the 764 movement. It thrives on false comforts. It makes offers that appear to soothe, but actually ensnare. At first, the help feels genuine. It echoes your pain. It mirrors your loneliness. It resonates with your wounds. And because it feels like someone finally sees you, you let your guard down. You accept the comfort. You trust the extended hand. But before long, you begin to realize that what looked like freedom is really just another kind of chain. This is how exploitation works. It starts where you're most vulnerable. See, no one gets trapped by a philosophy or a community that doesn't at least partially make sense at first, right? It always begins with recognition. It begins with a voice that says, I see you. I understand you. I understand why you hurt. I have the answer. But that answer is never truly designed to heal. It's designed instead to hook. And young men are especially susceptible to this because so many of us have been starved for authentic care. We've been taught to tough it out, to numb the pain, to hide what hurts. And when someone finally comes along and says, I understand your suffering, I'll give you a place to belong, it feels like a rescue. But it's not intimacy, it's entrapment. It's not real belonging. It's a counterfeit that's designed to keep you dependent. And the tragedy is that false comfort feels good at first. It lowers your defenses. It gives you a language for your struggle. It provides temporary relief for the silence. And in that moment, you don't realize the cost. You don't see the hook. You only feel the bait. This is why integrity and intimacy are essential. Integrity is what allows you to test whether the comfort aligns with your deepest values. It asks, is this leading me into freedom or into dependence? Is this calling me into wholeness or just numbing me out? Intimacy allows you to bring your pain into safe relationships where help isn't a hook and where care doesn't really come with control. Without these two, you'll always be vulnerable and susceptible to counterfeit help. The 764 movement doesn't just feed on pain. It feeds on the hunger for comfort. It knows that we all long to be seen and soothed and supported. And it takes and twists that longing into leverage. And that's why false comfort is so effective. It doesn't just deny your pain, it names it. And then it uses it. And unless you learn to discern the difference, help will always come with these hidden chains. The reason that false comfort works so effectively is because it doesn't feel false in the beginning. It feels like relief. It feels like finally being understood. And when you've been carrying pain in silence, that relief is intoxicating. See, the first hit of counterfeit care is so powerful. Not because it's true, but More so because it touches the hunger that has been ignored for far too long. I mean, think about it. If a man has spent years feeling invisible and overlooked or dismissed, what's going to capture his attention? Not some abstract philosophy, not an intellectual argument, but recognition. See, the moment that someone says, I see your suffering, I know why you hurt, you're not alone, the walls will start crumbling. The hook, which is hidden inside the empathy, it's like the bait is wrapped in validation. And it's not entirely a lie. That's what makes it so believable. False comfort begins with truth. They acknowledge the real pain. They name real loneliness. They call out the rejection. And then they pivot. Instead of offering a path to healing, they lock the pain in place. They reframe suffering as something to move through, and more so proof of your identity. They tell you this is who you are now. This is the pain that defines you. This despair is your wisdom. And once you accept that redefinition, you stop looking for freedom and you accept the hook as your new home. And this is why counterfeit belonging feels so convincing. It resonates with your wounds. It gives you language for the despair you've been feeling. It offers this framework that explains the struggle. But what it never does is it never leads you to wholeness. Because wholeness would mean that you don't need the counterfeit anymore. And counterfeits only survive if they can keep you dependent. See, the psychology of false comfort is rooted in timing. It arrives not when you're strong, but when you're at your weakest point. It shows up when you're surrounded by authentic despair and when you're isolated. It disguises itself as the very thing that you've been craving: validation, recognition, belonging. And when you're starving, even poison can taste like nourishment at first. So how do we begin to discern the difference between genuine care and this hook? This is where integrity comes in. Integrity, like I said, is that alignment of your inner truth with your outer choices. It's what asks the hard questions like, does this comfort actually set me free, or does it keep me stuck? Does it call me to courage, or does it encourage me into resignation? Does it help me face reality, or does it help me numb from it? See, genuine care always points towards freedom, whereas false comfort always points towards dependence. Intimacy is just as vital as integrity, because intimacy is a space where your pain can be witnessed without being used against you. When you experience safe connection, when someone can hear your story without really turning it into leverage, you start to develop this radar for counterfeits. You learn to feel the difference between love that liberates and help that hooks. And once you've tasted the real thing, the fake one loses its shine. The 764 movement thrives because so many men have never really experienced that real kind of intimacy. When you've never known the safety of being seen without the strings attached, you don't know how to tell the difference. You assume that all comfort is going to come with a hook. And so when false comfort appears, you just accept that as normal. But it's not normal. That it's not inevitable. And it's not the only option. That the cost of accepting false comfort is devastating, not only for the individual who's experiencing it, but also for everyone who's connected to him. See, at first, it doesn't look destructive. In fact, it often looks like progress. A man who once felt isolated sometimes now seems to be more engaged and maybe more talkative and more alive. And this is when families will breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, he's found something that helps him, right? But over time, the cracks begin to show. and false comfort drains the potential. And when a man accepts despair as his wisdom, he stops reaching for more. He convinces himself that numbness is maturity and that loss of hope is just realism. And so he settles and he gives up on his dreams and he shrinks his vision, if you will. He lowers his expectations and he stops asking what wholeness could look like because he's now accepted this counterfeit version of belonging that tells him that this is just as good as it gets. False comfort fractures families. Parents, siblings, and partners even they're susceptible to sense that shift. They see their son, their brother, their loved one retreat into this echo chamber that promises connection but delivers instead control. Conversations become one-sided and defensiveness usually replaces openness. Isolation replaces intimacy. And those closest to him feel the distance begin to grow wider and wider, no matter how hard it is that they're trying to reach and connect with him. False comfort hollows out even the communities that we're in. You see, when enough individuals are trapped by counterfeit belonging, the culture begins to bend and cynicism spreads. Distrust begins to deepen and people start to treat despair as the only honest perspective, while hope is dismissed as naive. And slowly a community that could have thrived on authenticity now becomes a network of people who are reinforcing each other's numbness. And the hook is no longer just personal, now it's just become systemic. This 764 movement survives by multiplying these kind of costs. It thrives not because its ideas are inherently compelling, but more so because they exploit the hunger. They, in essence, feed off of wounds that were never healed, off of these needs that were never met, and off of hopes that were never honored. And the tragedy in all this is that many never realize what's happening until years have been lost. But here's the thread of hope. False comfort is not permanent. The hook can be removed. The counterfeit can be unmasked. And it begins when one man chooses integrity and intimacy over resignation and control. Integrity says, this does not align with who I want to be. And intimacy says, I'm going to risk being known even when it scares me. Those choices will begin to ripple outward. They begin to restore families. They begin to rebuild communities. They create environments where counterfeits cannot thrive. So every time that someone refuses to let help become a hook, they're reclaiming not just their own life, but they're also reclaiming the possibility of connection for everyone who's connected to them. And that's why this conversation matters. The cost of comfort is, the cost of false comfort can be high, but the power of real care that's rooted in intimacy and integrity is even higher still. False comfort always promises what it cannot deliver. It offers belonging, but delivers bondage. It offers care, but delivers control. It offers healing, but delivers harm. And when we accept it, even unknowingly, we then discover too late that what looked like relief was only another layer of captivity. But here's the truth. Real care doesn't come with a hook. Real healing doesn't demand dependence. Real belonging doesn't require you to silence the parts of yourself just so that you can stay included. Genuine comfort may not always feel easy, but it always leads you towards freedom. It calls you higher. It gives you the tools to stand stronger, not weaker. It empowers you to walk in integrity and not to collapse into resignation. This is why integrity matters so much. Integrity is the compass that keeps you aligned when comfort feels tempting, but is actually false. It's that inner voice, if you will, that says, I want freedom, not control. I want wholeness and not numbness. I want truth, not these illusions. Without integrity, you'll keep mistaking hooks for these lifelines. But with integrity, you can actually see through the bait and choose differently. And intimacy. Intimacy is how you heal the hunger that false comfort tries to exploit. When you have safe people who can hold your pain without using it against you, when you're seen without strings attached, the hooks lose their appeal. Counterfeit belonging only works when real belonging feels impossible. But the moment that you experience intimacy, the courage to say intimacy, it's then that you discover that vulnerability can be honored instead of exploited. Now, for you young men who are listening, this is the moment of choice. You will always be offered counterfeit comforts. There will always be these movements and communities and even ideologies that are ready to feed off of your pain. But you are not powerless. You can choose integrity over resignation. You can choose intimacy over isolation. You can refuse that hook and demand for the real thing. For families and for communities, this is my invitation. Let's create these spaces where help doesn't come with strings and where presence matters far more than performance. Let's create spaces where care liberates instead of controls. Because every time that we are modeling that kind of genuine belonging, we're weakening the grip of the counterfeits. And we're in essence showing a better way. At Uber Vintagers, my mission is to call men into lives of integrity and intimacy. Because I believe that's where freedom begins. False comfort will always try to masquerade as care, but they cannot withstand men who are aligned and connected. They cannot stand against families who choose presence over silence. And they cannot thrive in these cultures where intimacy is honored instead of avoided. So here's the charge. Don't settle for baits. Don't accept the counterfeit. Don't confuse the hook for healing. Instead, choose integrity, choose intimacy, choose the kind of comfort that frees instead of binds. Because when help is real, it doesn't keep you dependent. It helps you stand tall and whole and unafraid. I hope this episode has served you in some capacity. Let me know down in the comments any insights or epiphanies, any experiences that you've had along the way. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening in.